If you own a law firm, this is for the moments when intake feels fine on paper, but the consult calendar, well, it's uneven, and the sign retainer count, it's not matching your effort. There's a specific moment that I keep seeing. It's a partner meeting where someone says calmly, but with real edge, I keep seeing them everywhere. Their ads, their map listing, their name in articles, their videos. And then the next sentence, this is the one that actually matters. Are we doing something wrong, or are they just spending more than we can? Now, that sounds like a budget question, and most of the time, it's not. What's actually happening is that you're experiencing a visibility gap. And a visibility gap when it comes to a law firm is when your firm is present in one or two places that you personally value, but you're absent from the platforms where prospects form their short lists before they ever talk to you. So you can be excellent and still be missing from the decision environment. Now, here's a familiar frame I see over and over again. You've got a website, looks respectable. You have a referral base that still sends you cases, even if it's less predictable. And you might even have a decent reputation in the courthouse and among your peers. But when a prospective client or a referring professional, another attorney, does their quiet diligence, your competitor shows up repeatedly across multiple platforms, and you show up once, if at all. And it's that repetition that creates a psychological effect that has nothing to do with competence. It signals certainty, and it signals scale, and it signals that the other people have already chosen them. Even sophisticated buyers are not immune to that. The friction point is that lawyers tend to evaluate marketing like lawyers. You want a clean, casual story. You want to know which channel produced which sign retainers. You want to believe that if you are better, you should win. And you want to believe that if you just pick the right vendor, the visibility problem, well, that will solve itself. Meanwhile, your competitor is not necessarily better at law. They're often just better at occupying surfaces. Think about that for a moment. Let me make this concrete for you with what I hear inside firms. The intake team, they'll say that call volume is flat, but the bad fit lead volume percentage is creeping up. Consult scheduling is happening, but the show rate is inconsistent. And a partner's going to notice that the consult to client conversion is fine, but when the right cases show up, but the pipeline feels like it's still being fed by randomness. Then someone's going to pull out a report and they're going to point to impressions, they're going to point to clicks, and maybe even cost per lead. And then the room is still going to feel tight because the report is not answering the question, why do they feel bigger than us? That is the visibility gap showing itself operationally. Not as a branding theory, but as a day-to-day friction. The wrong calls, the uneven calendar, the feeling that you're doing a lot just to stay in place. The hidden layer is that prospects do not experience your marketing as a funnel. They experience it as a set of credibility checkpoints. They're going to bounce between platforms. They're going to look at map results. They're going to skim a couple pages of your website. They're going to check out your reviews. They're going to look for a face. They're going to look for language that matches their own situation. They look for signs you actually handle their case type, not just that you're generally competent. And if your firm only shows up strongly in one checkpoint, you're asking that prospect to take a bigger leap of faith. Your competitor is reducing the leap by being present in more places more consistently. It's as simple as that. And this is where attorneys get understandably cynical. You've already paid for SEO. You've already tried paid ads. You've already done a brand new website. And you've already been told to post more on social media. And you start thinking, Am I not doing content for content's sake here? I do not want activity. I want leverage. Great. I want you to keep that skepticism. It's going to help you. Stick with me. The decision rule that I want you to consider is simple. Stop arguing about who is louder and start mapping where the decision is made. In other words, you've got to identify your visibility gap before you spend another dollar trying to outspend someone who might not even be outspending you. Operationally, this shows up in 3 places that you can actually measure without getting lost in all those vanity metrics. The first thing is you've got to look at your consult scheduling patterns, not just lead volume. So if your consult calendar is full for a week and then thin for a week, that can be a platform issue, not a demand issue. I mean, it can mean you are intermittently visible in one place while your competitor is steadily visible across several. The second thing is look at the retainer sent versus the retainer sign gap for marketing source leads. When a prospect arrives already half convinced because they've seen you in multiple credibility checkpoints, the decision process tends to be cleaner. Then, when they arrive with uncertainty because you were hard to validate, the consult can go fine, but it still ends in a stall. And third, I want you to look at your intake triage notes and conflict checks for patterns and case type fit. When your visibility is broad but shallow, you attract noise. And when your visibility is narrow but deep, you attract fit. A visibility gap, it often correlates with bad fit leads because the only platform you're winning is the one that rewards generic presence. So as a quick sidebar, I did put a sanity check in the description. It's there to help you compare your signed retainer count and consult to client conversion against the platforms you're actually showing up on. Check that out. Now back to the video. The part that usually stings in that partner meeting is the temptation to treat visibility like a moral issue. They're everywhere. We are not. Therefore, we are behind. That is not a useful conclusion. The useful conclusion is that visibility is a distribution problem, not a self-worth problem. Your competitor might be occupying platforms you've dismissed as low quality. They might be comfortable looking slightly repetitive. They might have decided that being seen is a prerequisite to being chosen, even by people who claim they only care about quality. And to be fair, there is a counterpoint. Sometimes they really are spending more. Sometimes a larger firm is just going to buy share of voice in ways you can't match dollar for dollar. But even then, your move is not automatically to spend more. Your move is to narrow the fight to the surfaces where your case type fits the strongest and where your operational follow-up speed can capitalize. This is where I always see experienced attorneys make an avoidable mistake. They respond to competitive pressure by broadening. They add practice areas to catch more volume. They loosen intake triage to keep the phones busy. They say yes to more marginal matters because the pipeline confidence is low. And then, the firm gets busier, but the marketing feels worse because the work mix is less profitable and the team is dealing with more friction. This is how a visibility gap turns into an operational nightmare. Your intake team gets worn down. Your consult calendar fills with low intent calls, and your consult to client conversion becomes harder to interpret because the input quality is unstable. And then the partners start arguing about marketing quality when the real issue is that the law firm is not controlling where and how it's actually being evaluated. So, what do you do at a high level without turning this into a platform tutorial? Well, You need to start picking one primary case type, lane that you actually want more of, and then you evaluate that visibility through that lens. Not what feels prestigious, not what the last vendor sold you, not what produces the cheapest leads, what produces the most consistent case type fit with the least operational drag. Then you can decide what you're willing to be known for in the public, repeatedly without sounding promotional. This is the part most attorneys resist. You want your reputation to speak for itself. In the real world, though, your reputation speaks through artifacts. The question is whether you're providing those artifacts in the places people actually look. So what you got to do is tighten the loop between visibility and intake. If your intake triage is not tagging sources accurately, you're just going to keep debating in the dark. If your follow-up speed is inconsistent, you'll misdiagnose visibility as the problem when the problem's response time. And if conflicts checks are delaying your first contact, you'll blame marketing for what is actually operational leakage. So the micro resolution in that partner meeting is not a big spend. It's a shared language. When someone says they're everywhere, you can respond with, we might have a visibility gap. Then start asking better questions. Which platforms are we winning? Which ones are we absent from? Which ones correlate with signed retainers, not just leads? Which ones are feeding bad fit volume into intake? That changes the tone of the room. And it's going to move you from envy to diagnosis. And it leaves you with an open loop that matters. If you close your visibility gap, would you actually like the cases that come in? And could your intake process handle them cleanly? Because being seen more is not automatically good. Being seen in the right places with the right signals, that's what reduces friction. So if you run a law firm and you want more of this kind of thinking, subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next video.